Joe Mays and J-Raff Show is brought to you in part by Mays Sandwich Shop, serving delicious hometown favorites to the West Lawn community since 1947. You are listening to the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show, bringing you the latest news and commentary on baseball.
The 0-2 pitch, swing and a miss, struck him out! The Philadelphia Phillies are 2008 World Champions of Baseball!
Hockey.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Flyers are going to win the Stanley Cup! The Flyers win the Stanley Cup!
College football.
The Big Ten championship lies on a measurement.
Did he get it? No! He didn't get it! Penn State holds!
They brought back the fun, they brought back the excitement, and now they've brought back a Big Ten championship. The Penn State Nittany Lions are Big Ten champions.
And the NFL.
He's in! Patriots win the Super Bowl! Brady has his fifth! What a comeback!
Now, here are your hosts, Joe Mays and Justin Raffoff.
Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to episode 231 of the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show. I'm one of your hosts, Joe Mays, and sitting next to me, my co-host, Justin Raffoff.
Yeah, it's good to be here. We had a bit of a schedule there where we were getting into a routine. Then spring break, even for the show, kind of came, and then but it's good to be back in the swing of things and back to a familiar topic tonight.
Yes, we are fully back to sports 100%. No talk of movies this evening, which we had done for the previous at least 4 or 5 episodes. We dealt mostly in film and cinema, going over our movie madness bracket and then moving on to a fun little viral social media type movies experiment last week on episode 230. In there, we also got to have a guest on, Mr. Dominic Jones from the Star Wars Underworld. He talked to us about our Movie Madness tournament, and we had a lot of fun talking to him. But this week, we are back to sports. We are on a topic that had for, nearly 2 decades of my life been one of my favorite events in the entire calendar year for sports. Everyone points to the Super Bowl, or opening day. The NFL draft has always been one of my favorite events in all of sports, and I look forward to it every year. But this year, just a little bit out of it, not as tuned in as I had been literally since 1995. I don't know a year that I have known as little as I did this year, but getting to watch the draft on the first round of the draft Thursday night with you and my dad, we still had a lot of fun enjoying it. Maybe didn't know as much about all the players being picked, or certainly which direction many of the teams would go. But Justin and I have reviewed the picks, and we're here to talk tonight. We'll obviously break down the top 10. We'll go over some of the notable first-round picks. We'll talk about Penn State, and we'll dive into our main 6 teams that we cover here on the show, spending most of our time probably on the Eagles at the beginning, and then following up with the Cowboys, Steelers, Ravens, Patriots, and Dolphins. So, anything, kind of like a grand overview of what happened at the draft on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday?
I just think, it's interesting to me because there's some people who are like, the draft is, kind of like overkill. People make a big deal out of it, even though most people have no idea what's really going on. I would say even at the level you and I are at this year, where we weren't following it nearly as closely, just inherently from our following of the NFL and following college football, we're able to, we probably know more than a vast majority of the people who are tuned into the NFL draft only on this week. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So when I look at it, I'm not exactly, not like, a few years ago when you were really into and, kind of giving me stuff about every one of these players, that's coming from like a D3 school. But, I think we still knew enough. And especially we have an idea for the teams that we care about one way or the other. Either
or our listeners care about.
Right, yeah. So, the teams that we root for and or root against, we generally have an idea, where their needs are and just some of the news stories that are going along with them as we get in touch with some of the stuff. So I was excited for it, but like you said, I honestly, one of the things going in was I was like, is Cleveland going to screw this up? So, and honestly, there's no way to really tell.
Well,
today
they were busy. They did a lot on Thursday, and we'll get to that. We'll touch on each of those briefly. I think before we dive into the football aspect of the teams, the players, I think we should take a step back and talk about the atmosphere, because it was in Philadelphia for the first time in, 56 years?
Yeah, long
1961.
Long time, right.
Now, Philadelphia hosted the inaugural draft in 1938, I think. Maybe 36. Now I'm forgetting. It was something in the mid to late 30s. The first ever NFL draft was held in Philadelphia. Yeah. Came back most recently in 61 until 2017.
A few more people in attendance this year.
Yes, just a tad. And they didn't disappoint. What an atmosphere it was. It was mentioned multiple times, and I'll pull up some pictures here to take a look at it. And, yeah, it was a great time by all. 70,000 on hand Thursday night, and you can get an idea from that picture there what it looked like.
For the record, that's more than the Eagles Stadium. That's more than Lincoln Financial Field holds. So that's an incredible number of people
there
to
really
watch
cool
the draft.
Shot
there.
When the Eagles were on the clock.
Right, and it's one of those things. It's cool because it's not just Philly people or Philly news saying like, oh, it was a great turnout, it was a big success. Like the sports writers, were kind of all talking about how, like Adam Schefter sent out a tweet just saying like, this is more than Philly could have hoped for in terms of how things went, and that's a lot of fun, and I'm glad it went. It seemed to go really well.
Yeah, and it is a really, really cool photo at night with the Eagles on the clock. They did it on the Art Museum steps, the Rocky steps, and wow, what an atmosphere. It was really, really cool to see, and everyone from the NFL, the executives that talked about it, seemed really pleased with the way everything went. They got the stereotypical Philadelphia booing in, which was wonderful. It was egged on by Goodell.
Right, but I think that's great.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Because, they knew it was going to happen.
BU.
Right. And by the way, he gets booed in New York. He gets booed in Chicago.
Everywhere.
It's just what people do. But he knew it was going to come. But, he played into it, which just kind of is great because it's set that, in a situation where the NFL a lot of times can come across, especially the New York offices of the NFL, I'm saying here, come across as taking themselves way too seriously. C, celebration rules. C, X, Y, and Z. There's some other things. I'll talk about this off the show. But that, Roger Goodell said this week. But, that was a great, idea to just kind of, play into it. And they basically it's a way for 70,000 people to interact with something that really, for the majority of the time, there's nothing for them to really watch.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's not like a football game where there's actually stuff going on. I mean, I'm sure they have things on the screens. They're introducing, they bring up military people, they bring up families, and that's all fantastic stuff. But at the same time, there's long periods of time where there's nobody picking, and then they announce the pick. Sometimes the person's there, sometimes they're not, and then that's it, so.
The current picture up, if you're watching on Facebook Live or watching YouTube after the fact, this was sent out by the official Philadelphia Eagles Twitter account. This photo shows what it looked like, the sea of people from the stage and out back towards the city. And just a sea of people, 70,000 plus strong, really, really cool photo. And then we could see it from the city towards the stage, from Brian Taff of 6ABC. Let's see if I can pull these up. And you can see right back here along.
For the record, I've run that stretch on the doing the Philly Half Marathon twice. That's a longer distance than you would realize. That's a few blocks.
You can see it zoomed in here a bit, but just the mass of people, and you see the art museum in the distance, and then the main stage, and then people flow all the way back to almost to the traffic circle.
Yeah.
So Philadelphia, great job. I know there was, an abundance of people, and there were traffic headaches, but
right, you're
going
to have those issues, right?
Smoothly,
right.
Smoothly.
We've talked about this a couple of weeks now.
Smoothly. So good job, Philadelphia. Hopefully, I would love that it was Chicago back-to-back years.
Back-to-back years.
I'd love for Philadelphia to have it back-to-back years because I want to go next year.
Right.
And we did find out that Philadelphia will be attempting to get a Super Bowl.
Yeah, which could be interesting. I wonder if that means they're looking to put a roof on the stadium, or if they're just gonna, kind of do an as-is kind of. I don't know. There's lots of implications there that I don't really know what those are. That we'll have plenty of time to talk about that because it's not for a little while yet. But
yes. Well, let's get into the draft now. The first pick was owned by the Cleveland Browns. Crazy to think, and they mentioned this on Thursday night. And when you got here, I said something to you immediately. The Browns have been awful for nearly the last 2 decades, essentially since they joined the league. I think they've had 2 seasons where they were close to the playoffs. One they got in the playoffs.
I mean, the old Browns haven't been that bad in that time frame.
No, let's not go there. Man, Joe's ears are ringing.
Yeah.
But the Browns kept the pick. It's the first time they had the number 1 overall pick since 2000, when Penn Staters went 1 and 2. Courtney Brown to the Browns, LeVar Arrington to the Redskins.
Arguably didn't make the right pick there. On the other hand, it was the Browns, so is it, there's not necessarily means it could have been whoever they picked wouldn't have worked out that well, but LeVar Arrington had a pretty strong career until he had some health issues, but Courtney Brown didn't have nearly the career that LeVar Arrington had in the NFL.
No, not of another one pick.
I know we'll talk about Penn State a little bit later, but Penn State had the 1 and 2 pick from the same defense that year.
Spoiler alert: there were more picks in the first 2 picks in 2000 than Penn State had in the entire draft this year.
Yes, also matched by Kutztown this year,
and bested by Villanova,
yeah,
which we'll get to. So the first pick kind of went as expected. Most of the time, people thought it was going to be Myles Garrett, the defensive end from Texas A&M. And despite flirting with Trubisky or maybe another quarterback, it ended up being Garrett, to the surprise of very, very few people. Then the first big surprise did happen immediately as we're sitting there after Myles Garrett is introduced as the number 1 overall pick going to the Cleveland Browns. All of a sudden, the 49ers drop from 2 to 3, and the Chicago Bears jump up 1 spot. And
chalk up a win for John Lynch.
What a great move.
His first draft as GM. I know there are people who are like, yeah, but what if Trubisky turns out to be a really good quarterback? That's true. But the Niners are terrible. Like, talent-wise, they need a lot of help.
They're on their 3rd coach in 3 years.
4th coach in 4 years.
Okay. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, because it was Harbaugh, then I don't even know
the guy that they hired just because they knew they could pay him like the minimum while still paying Harbaugh for firing him.
Chip Kelly.
And now
my gosh, I can't even think of who the coach is out there right now.
Oh, the guy from Atlanta, the offense coordinator.
Shanahan.
Yeah.
Kyle Shanahan. Yeah. Man, I was like, I don't know a coach in the NFL. So the Bears jump up to 3 with the 49ers. They just flip-flop, but the 49ers hoodwinked the Bears, getting a 3rd and 4th this year that they used Friday and then Saturday, 3rd and 4th. And also a 3rd-round pick next year for 1 spot. Now, the 49ers weren't taking Trubisky. Right. They were taking who they took at 3, Solomon Thomas.
Which is awesome, and I know you've heard this. But, so, John Lynch went back and got his degree from Stanford just a few years ago. While there, he took a class with Solomon Thomas. And they were partners on a group project.
So he knows this guy pretty well.
He knows Solomon Thomas, like, literally in the classroom. We all know how those group projects can go. They either go really well or really bad.
Massive disaster.
I'm going to go out on a limb and assume that this particular group project went pretty well. So that being said, solid pick for them. And I think that connection's kind of cool. And they got the guy they wanted and a bunch of extra picks. Really couldn't ask for more from San Francisco. And they talked about how every time the TV screen went to San Francisco, John Lynch had his phone up. They said they don't know that he was actually talking to anyone about anything significant, but it made the Bears think, John Lynch is on the phone. Somebody's trying to get up to 2, take our guy. Also, the front office in Chicago did not tell John Fox and crew.
That's been disputed, but who knows who's telling the truth.
Right, exactly. But either way, the fact that can even, that's one of those things where this is how I view it. It gets reported because somebody's like, John Fox didn't know about that, or one of the other coaches didn't know, right? And then they go after the fact and they're like, John, did you know? Oh, yeah, we discussed all this. Because what's he going to say? Yeah, they did it without me?
Right.
Make that divide bigger? I don't know. Either way, it'll be interesting to see there kind of how that works. So.
All right, so the Jaguars at 4 took Leonard Fournette. That offense is young and has a lot of talent. Hopefully Bortles can rebound and have a good year for the Jaguars now that he's got Fournette in his backfield.
Yeah, I think the leash is still really short there, especially having brought in Parcells, to kind of run the show.
Oh, you mean not Parcells,
yeah, not
you mean
Parcells.
Tom Coughlin.
Yeah, that's what I meant. I meant old grouchy guy.
Insert name here.
Yeah.
Then the Titans, who got the pick from the Chargers because of the golf trade last year, they select Corey Davis, the speedy wide receiver from Western Michigan.
Good weapon for Mariota to have.
Then one of my favorite players in the entire draft, Jamal Adams, the safety from LSU, goes unfortunately to one of the teams I hate the most, the New York Jets.
Some argue that he was the best, or certainly maybe the second best overall player in the draft. But positions and needs kind of drive a lot here, especially early on. So the Jets got a good one here in Jamal Adams. And they have a defensive coach as their head coach. So a lot of people really like that pick, including you.
I do like it a lot. I mean, I like it. I hate it because I like it so much.
Right, exactly.
Then the other LA team actually did make a pick. The Chargers go with Mike Williams, someone that you really liked. We're hoping maybe for Philadelphia, wide receiver from Clemson. Too many Mike Williams have been wide receivers in the NFL over the years.
Yes.
Some good, some bad.
Exactly. I think it is a good pick for the Chargers.
Oh, so do I. If they want to have any chance of winning now, they got to give Philip Rivers weapons.
Yeah.
And it's going to be it's whiteout core now.
He fits the mold of the guys that San Diego has always had, 6'4", 230. He's a big wide receiver.
Well, and
I don't know that he's 6'4", but I mean, just I'm thinking this goes back, but David Boston pre-HGH, he was still a big guy, and then he became a huge guy. But some of those guys were just insane, and they've always had a big guy out there, and Mike Williams can fit right in.
The second Stanford player to go in the top 8 was running back Christian McCaffrey going to the Panthers. Maybe a little bit of surprise, at least for me, that the Panthers wanted him.
Well, it's interesting
this high at that
position. They wanted Fournette. They kind of made it clear, and so then they took the next running back, which is fine.
He's
a lot of people love Christian McCaffrey, but the exact opposite style of Leonard Fournette. Not better or worse, but just when you're talking about this guy and talking up the style and all the things that can do for you, when that guy's gone, you're like, okay, they'll probably go a different direction. They kind of did, but
they made a good point on Thursday night on NFL Network saying that now with the weapons that the Panthers offense have, can you imagine trying to stop a read option with Newton in the backfield with McCaffrey? Well, if you have Stewart in there in a dual, a split backfield.
I saw one of the things they talked about too was they talked about how Cam Newton's completion percentage was 59, 58% last year, something like that, under 60, which isn't good, especially in a time in an era where you're seeing guys flirt with 70% on a fairly every season basis. That's the high end, obviously, but they talk about these short passes. Well, Christian McCaffrey they said, he's easily going to catch 4 or 5 balls just, within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage every week. And whether that's good for the TV or not, they obviously that's a completely separate discussion. They said, but you eliminate those 5, which maybe 4 of them were incompletes for Cam, and you make them easy passes short to the running back. all of a sudden you're talking like 65% completion percentage. So they said this one move just shows some of the flaw in that statistic, but also just protecting him a little bit from getting hit so much. So I think it'll be a good fit if they can work him in right. It'll be interesting. I like Christian McCaffrey. I honestly have no idea what to think of him. It was kind of hard to get a read because while he had his moments this past year at Stanford had a somewhat down year from what they've had the last decade. So he kind of struggled at times, but they didn't have a ton of weapons there on offense. They have a solid defense usually, but offensively they kind of struggle at times, and they've struggled at quarterback the last few years. So it can be difficult to assess what that actually means.
The Bengals picked 9th. They missed the playoffs for the first time this year since 2010. They needed a threat opposite A.J. Green, who unfortunately for them is getting older now and has fought through some injuries. Yeah. And they added an incredibly speedy wide receiver from Washington, John Ross. He's had some health issues, and that was thought to maybe hold him back a little bit, but they took him in the top 10, and they'll pair him with Green and Eifert, and now an incredibly deep running backfield, which we'll get to. I think a little bit later. I have his name coming up, but they've now got 3 running backs. I'm not sure where the touches are going to go, but Andy Dalton better get it done now, or Marvin Lewis will no longer be the longest tenured coach in the NFL.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And maybe a bit of a surprise here at 10. The Chiefs trading up from way down with Buffalo to get to this 10 spot. People thought initially that this was going to be the quarterback from Clemson, Deshaun Watson.
Because there's been a connection, and Andy Reid has been a big fan of Deshaun Watson for a long time, last few years. So people kind of thought it was heading that way. And they did go quarterback, but they did not go with Deshaun Watson.
No, they went with Patrick Mahomes, the quarterback from Texas Tech. He needs refinement.
Oh, yeah.
He needs years. But the thing is, the Chiefs have the system with Andy Reid and the current quarterback, Alex Smith, not quite ready to hang it up.
The physical tools that you saw, there are reports that he can throw it in the end zone from a knee from 75 yards.
Yeah.
We saw highlights. Now, I didn't see that. I saw him throw it 75 yards into the end zone fairly easily.
Yeah.
There was a highlight where he's scrambling to his left. He's a right-handed quarterback, so throwing as you're running to your left, sprinting to your left is a hard throw to make. Throws it like 40 yards into the corner of the end zone, drops it, perfectly. Like, those are the types of things where, man, if you got a guy who can make those types of throws and you think he can, develop into being able to understand the position, and it's going to be a very different system than at Texas Tech, under Cliff Kingsbury, I think there.
Yes.
So it's going to be a very different system, but if you think he's got the tools and can make the adjustment, then you may have gotten the guy who in a few years, is your go-to guy. I think Alex Smith is 32 or 33, so probably has a few more years left, but that decision isn't a decision they're going to make this year.
Ideally, they'd
anticipate Alex Smith to be your quarterback this year in Kansas City.
Ideally, the Chiefs probably want to be in that 9 to 11 win area so that Alex Smith can stay there for the next 2 years, I would think. Maybe 3 if they can push it, but Mahomes, they'll want to see what they got eventually because you're going to have to be picking up a 5th-year option because of that.
Right.
The collective bargaining agreement changed that with the first-round draft picks. So we need to see something from him before deciding are we picking that up or not. So I would think that the plan is for at least this year Alex Smith to start, probably next year as well. Now I'm talking 2018 before Mahomes takes over, likely 2019. That would be my guess. But
if you look at it, you're in a division where it looks like Carr is going to be the guy, the next premier quarterback in that division.
Right.
That's had some studs for a while now.
Alex Smith and Phillip Rivers are on the wrong side of 30.
Right, exactly. So if you're looking at Kansas City, you're like, well, we don't want to be left in the dark and scrambling for somebody in a few years as these other teams are starting to add their guys in. So if they think that's their guy, or can be their guy, I should say, then, go for it, I guess.
All right, we're going to do a few quick hits here in the next parts of the segments, recounting the NFL draft from Thursday, Friday, and Saturday in Philadelphia. Pick 12, Houston Texans. They got Deshaun Watson,
I love
quarterback
this pick.
from Clemson.
I think it's great. He's the best quarterback they will have had since 2 years ago. Hoyer was there, right?
He
and did okay, but couldn't stay healthy. And then, they didn't give
Honestly,
him a job anyway and all that
he's
stuff.
probably the best quarterback they had since Matt Schaub had a few good years in a row.
You can make that argument, yeah. And they've made the playoffs the last 2 years. So,
Right.
it's hard for me to imagine that Deshaun Watson, under Bill O'Brien, and I know people are like, well, Bill O'Brien hasn't done it since he went to Houston, all that stuff. I get it. But it's hard for me to believe that Deshaun Watson isn't good enough to lead them to the playoffs again this year. Now
You
a
would
lot
think.
of that'll depend, but Indy has shown us that it's not just Andrew Luck being healthy. They have a
they've
lot
got a whole
of
bunch
issues.
of problems.
Right, so why not Houston, right? I think Deshaun Watson is the best quarterback they've had there in a few years, which is scary to think about because what you see from him this year is only going to be the tip of the iceberg, and he can get better. Now, how long can they keep the defense together? How long can they keep those things? Those are all other questions, but I think Houston has a lot to be excited about from that pick.
Up next, 13 was the Arizona Cardinals, and they took Philadelphia area native and Temple alum Hassan Reddick to
Awesome
play
story.
linebacker.
Kid goes to high school in Camden, walks on at Temple, and now gets drafted
13th.
Yeah, 13th, second highest Temple pick ever, I believe.
Who would have been in front of him?
He
Muhammad
announced,
Wilkerson. No? Was he not top 13?
It could have been. I thought it was a guy.
He might have been
It was
lower.
a lineman for the Jets, I believe.
Yeah, Muhammad Wilkerson.
No. This is from late
from a
80s,
long time
early
ago.
90s.
Oh, that's
yeah.
funny that they're on the same.
Yeah.
'Cause Wilkerson is with the Jets still.
I'm pretty sure it's that. I could be wrong.
Okay, I can't, off the top of my head, I'm not sure. Next notable one, only because he was thought to be one of the top 3 to 5 players in the draft. Jonathan Allen, the defensive lineman from Alabama, fell to the Redskins at 17.
Yeah, I don't like that because
he's a good player.
He's good and he went to the Redskins.
But word is that he has issues with his shoulder.
Well, actually, I think there are issues with both shoulders. Right,
yes. Yes.
So, now, if that's taken care of, then the Redskins got a steal because you got one of the best players in the draft more than halfway through. So
at 18, the Titans were up for the second time. This time it was their own pick. And speaking of injuries, a player we saw get knocked out of the Rose Bowl game against Penn State, USC defensive back and returner Adoree Jackson.
Yeah. Another playmaker.
Yeah, if they can figure out a way to get him the ball in the return game or even use him at wide receiver, if they don't think that he's quite ready on defense, he could be an interesting slash-type player in 2017.
Yeah, and it's interesting that Tennessee has gotten to that point where they can take – yeah, they're probably going to look to play him in the defensive backfield at some point here. But, a guy that they can make a – how we see this in college recruiting, how they take athlete, who's not really determined where or how he's going to contribute yet, but they know he's just good enough to kind of fit in somewhere, and that Tennessee is at that point where they don't we don't need the best offensive lineman at this point. We don't they're like we can take a defensive back / returner / just weapon kind of guy. That's a good sign for Tennessee. I think that they feel they're at that point.
19th, Tampa Bay. Only notable because I wanted him to go to Miami. Alabama tight end O.J. Howard. The Buccaneers have quietly put together quite the offense on paper, from Jameis Winston to Mike. I almost said Mike Williams. It'd be another Mike Williams to who they just signed, Deshaun Jackson.
Yeah.
And you hope that Doug Martin is healthy for them.
Right.
And the wide receiver from Texas A&M, that's their number one guy. I can't think of his name.
I don't know.
He's my keeper in fantasy, and I can't think of his name now.
Oh, I know who you mean.
You know who I'm talking about, though.
Yeah, because I have him in another league.
In another league, right? Yeah.
And I can't remember his name either.
Yeah. So
we're getting old.
Yeah, we are, really. So the Buccaneers have quite the offense if they can put it all together. And Mike Evans. I knew it was Mike something. That's why I said Mike. And I was like, it's not Williams. So, yeah, Mike Evans to pair with Deshaun Jackson, Doug Martin, Jameis Winston. And, Cameron Brate wasn't anything to sneeze at last year. Tight end. Now they add O.J. Howard. So, if the Buccaneers can get a semblance of a defense, they could be making some noise in the NFC South this year. 24, we'll jump there. Oakland Raiders, only notable because it's a guy that was in the news a lot leading up to the draft. Garyon Conley, the defensive back from Ohio State, the one accused of rape, essentially.
Yeah. The week of the draft.
Yeah, leading up to the draft.
They said the issue there was it didn't give NFL teams a lot of time to investigate.
Right.
I did see a report, and I, to be honest, I have not followed the story that closely. I saw the headline, but I do know that
he passed the polygraph.
On Thursday, they said a lot of NFL teams do believe that he will be exonerated from this, that it's, kind of a ploy. I'm not here to discuss whether that's
we're not
accurate or not,
into
but it was interesting, and I said it'll be interesting because if a team takes him, then you know what,
have to deal with
they
it.
believe that
he's innocent.
That he's innocent because they would, the way the things are set up now, they would not take him in the first round if they thought he's going to be missing a year or more, from the league, let alone from his legal issues. So this goes to show me that the Oakland Raiders aren't minimizing the problem. They think there isn't a problem.
If he would
here.
be indicted, my guess is the Raiders wouldn't even sign him.
No. Yeah, I would agree. They would.
Because then you don't have to worry about it.
Yep.
So we'll have to pay attention to that. But yeah, like you said, if the Raiders felt good enough to take him at 24, my instinct is saying that the teams, or at least the Raiders, think he is innocent and that this is just fabricated. 25, the Browns' second of 3 picks. They take Jabril Peppers.
Interesting pick here.
Safety, linebacker, return man from Michigan, a guy that got a lot of press last year. Not sure how much of it was deserved.
I think he was maybe one of the most overrated players in all of college football.
Well, how did Joe feel about this pick? Being a fan of both.
I think he likes the potential, but he would be. I didn't talk to him a lot about this specific one, but I know that he would be happy that they got a Michigan guy, but at the same time, Joe's probably thinking it's not going to work because, one, he went to the Browns, and 2, he's from Michigan, and all his friends from Ohio State are going to rip him about how the Michigan guy is terrible. That's probably his main line of thinking. The second thing, and I know he would agree on this one, is that, all right, you're not playing all over. Where are you going to play and be good at that position?
Well,
and he's not big enough to play linebacker.
Well, we talked about it leading up to the draft. Now, we weren't together when this pick was made, but we talked about Peppers, and I said you need to go to a location that has a great defensive coordinator, great system, someone smart enough to figure out where to play him and when. He's not an everyday player probably at either position, at least not right now. And like you said, he's not big enough to play linebacker, at least not every down. Maybe situationally, third down passing situations, things like that. But
when they played the better teams, he was exposed in college football.
Right, what's it going to be like in the NFL?
Right,
yeah, head scratcher. But I wasn't high on him to begin with.
Right.
Of course, there's still a little bit of a hate for him spurning Penn State because he was choosing between Michigan, Penn State, a few other schools.
But I think he's a fantastic college football player. I thought his production didn't match the hype last year. Now, I'm not sure it could have because he was hyped a lot. And Michigan had things rolling for a while last year until they hit some stumbling blocks. Yeah. But somebody mentioned that because there were a number of Michigan players that got drafted. And somebody said, heck, I think through the first round it was as many as
they set a record
as Alabama,
a school
right?
record.
Or more. I don't know. But somebody said, heck of a lot of talent to finish third in their division in the Big Ten East.
No, the Browns actually made 3 picks in the first round. They traded back with Green Bay to get 29. They wanted the tight end David Njoku from Miami.
And they let go Gary Barnidge.
And Gary Barnidge is now a free agent.
Who had a great year 2 years ago. Wasn't that great last year. At the same time, though...
It's the Browns.
Yeah, you have to think Gary Barnidge might be a good pickup for a team that's looking for a veteran tight end.
He'll end up going to New England.
Yeah, and... scoring 12 touchdowns and get a Super Bowl ring. Yeah.
31 was the 49ers, notable only because they traded up with the Seahawks to get another guy that they say they had rated in their top 3, a player that many people thought would go in the top 10. He had some issues off the field and maybe injury related as well.
Yes.
And that's Reuben Foster, the mammoth linebacker from Alabama. He's a guy that I wanted the Dolphins to also consider, but his free fall stops at 31, goes to San Francisco, and John Lynch, like he said, got Solomon, Thomas, and Reuben Foster to shore up that defense.
See, to me, this is an interesting kind of thing because they talk about how Reuben Foster, there are just a variety of issues. like you mentioned, but some include like attitude and things like attitude on the field and stuff like that, which is interesting to me because we talk about this all the time. Nick Saban is very much, in the way he runs that program, it is his way or you're gone. You know what I mean? See that as he fired his offensive coordinator between the first round and second round of the college football playoff. You know, like between the semifinal and the final, he fired. Now, no, they mutually agreed to leave, to go separate ways. Yeah, right.
Yeah, sure. I believe that.
But, you know, so I know we have Saban's a separate issue, but like they've got the talent to just replace guys. You know, like if you're not buying in, if you're not doing your thing, right? Yet he still was a standout on that team. So like if those issues are real, then his talent level must be absolutely insane to make up for that, right? Like in my mind. Or those issues aren't as big as they are being portrayed to be. You know what I mean? Which I think is the more likely case. Because, you know, this sounds kind of ridiculous, but you can only be so good. You know what I mean? And he's really good to begin with. So how could he be that much better? You know what I mean? Like, he's not the greatest linebacker in the history of the game.
Yeah.
He's really good. But, like, you know, to make up for that gap, if his attitude was as bad as some are saying, and there were those issues, then, you know,
if those are all true, I don't want him on the Dolphins.
Right, and I think it's not some of that. I think that's, like, nitpicking, and I think that's starting to pile on, and teams trying to add into the, well, you know, there is a shoulder issue, and we don't know how serious he take, you know. I think it's just kind of sandbagging to be like, yeah, see, like, you know. But I did hear a lot of talk, too, that they hope that Navarro Bowman is the perfect guy to kind of to mentor him and kind of show him, like, this is how you need to be a professional linebacker.
All right, let's talk the teams we're repping on our shirts here in the studio tonight. Penn State, I kind of, you know, mentioned it earlier in the show that wasn't a great draft class for Penn State. They only had one player selected in the 253 picks in the 2017 draft. As of tonight, I noticed 4 other players signed undrafted free agent contracts.
I did see someone did mention that, to be fair,
there aren't a lot of upperclassmen.
The upperclassmen that left Penn State, they said, that were actual contributors to the team, you could fit them in a Prius. All right, and that's not too far from the truth. I mean, it might be a tight fit, but like, you know what I mean? Like, they were one of the youngest teams, whereas Michigan graduated like 48 or 49 players last year, I think. So,
and that's why everyone's high on Penn State for this year.
Right, yeah.
So the biggest loss for the Penn State team this fall is Chris Godwin. He was the only player that was picked. He went to the Buccaneers, another offensive threat for them, in the 3rd round, the 84th overall pick. So good luck to Chris. I was hoping he'd come back to Penn State for his senior season.
I saw friend of the show, former Penn Stater, former Buccaneer, John Gilmore, sent out a welcome to Tampa. Yeah,
yep.
So
I saw that as well. Then, like I said, 4 undrafted Penn Staters signed NFL contracts. Linebacker Brandon Bell to the Bengals. Defensive end Evan Schwan to the Giants. Semi-local there, graduated from Central Dauphin. Won the state championship following the 2011 season with Central Dauphin. He's off to the New York Giants. Former safety Malik Golan goes to the 49ers in the Bay Area. And defensive lineman Garrett Sickles is going to the Indianapolis Colts.
This is one of the interesting ones, Garrett Sickles. Like, and I get it, and we see this a lot more now that football players they're all there in the summer and they're all taking classes. Like Garrett Sickles graduated, so like, you know, there's some people like, oh, he left early. Well, he kind of left early, you know, because he did graduate and
he had athletic eligibility.
Right?
Left.
Yeah. So I don't blame him for leaving, but he had a year left. He could have come back now. Honestly, here's the thing. If you don't think your draft stock is going to get that much better in 1 year, then maybe you should just go and sign as a, you know, obviously you'd love to get drafted, but you sign with a team where you think you've got a chance to, you know, make the practice squad or make the team and, you know, work your way up. But it brings me right back to Deion Barnes a few years ago who left. Yeah. He might have had 2 years of eligibility left, I think. Like, he was a flashier player, but,
oh, yeah, absolutely.
You know, left early. That was more of a situation where I felt like it was bad advice and more maybe a prisoner of the situation in the moment, you know, kind of like, I don't know what's going to happen here, you know, that kind of thing. Garrett Sickles was more, you know, you graduated from college. Like, if you don't, you know, if you want to move on with your life, like, who's to say you shouldn't, pursue that. So
we don't know all the information, so it's tough for me to be hard on anyone for choosing that.
Right, exactly.
But I understand what you're trying to say, and
Right.
I completely agree.
Right, and yeah, to be fair, that's from the Penn State perspective, where I would love to have him back. But I know there are people Penn State fans who will be like, look, see, he should have stayed. No,
Well, yeah. Well, you go through that nearly every year. There's
Right.
someone you're like, come on, why are you leaving?
right. So I don't blame him at all. I hope it works out for him. But yeah, it's the guys with the eligibility,
Right.
sometimes that you're like, but you never know. If he comes back and gets hurt, then who knows? He might not ever get a shot, so.
Besides the Penn Staters, a few other notable undrafted players.
Yeah, definitely.
BYU quarterback Taysom Hill went to the Packers.
I'm kind of surprised he wasn't drafted, although he's had some injury issues, I believe.
He has, yes. I believe he actually might have been at BYU for 6 years. And he also would have already done his, so he's probably older.
Yeah, he's probably like 27.
Yeah. Minnesota quarterback Mitch Leidner. This is why you don't believe anything that's coming out now about the 2018 draft, because last year at this time people were talking about him as a first-round quarterback. Florida State wide receiver Travis Rudolph goes to the Giants.
That's one where that one, I feel that one really tears at me because it's Florida State, so not a fan.
Right.
Goes to the Giants.
Not a fan.
Not a fan. But Travis Rudolph, all the stories. So you may have caught the story. They showed it during the draft. They showed it also last football season, how he kind of took the middle schooler with autism kind of under his wing. And but great story. His dad was killed in a freak accident kind of thing 2 weeks ago. A gun went off. Bullet travels into a different room and kills his dad. Just terrible circumstances. I'm really rooting for Travis Rudolph, even though that goes everything again's me in the fandom
Too bad
thing.
he's a former Seminole now playing for the Giants.
I know. So I hope he does good when it benefits the Eagles. We'll put it that way. So against the Cowboys and Redskins, I hope he does well. But
another big-time collegiate wide receiver, former Baylor Bear Katie Cannon goes to the 49ers. Big Ten quarterback Michigan State Tyler O'Connor to the Bengals. West Virginia running back Russell Shell to the Steelers. Texas A&M quarterback Trevor Knight to the Cardinals. And Wisconsin running back Corey Clement to the Eagles.
New Jersey native, too, Corey Clement. I like that pick for the Eagles. I think Corey Clement could see some time. Eagles aren't necessarily there, and we're about to get to that. But, some people thought they might make a splash with drafting a running back. That wasn't the case. And I'm okay with that. I really am. If they could get a guy that they wanted, I was fine with that. But don't take someone for the sake of taking someone. You can get somebody in the free agency, there. So I don't have a problem with that. I know some people will, but not me.
Some people have problems
some people
just to have problems.
Just like to be wrong all the time. Right. So
they need to watch this show because we're
say,
never wrong.
I was going to say some people probably think that about herself. But,
all right, so let's take a look now at the Eagles draft as a whole. We'll run through most of them pretty quickly. We want to recap all 6 of these teams before we get out of here. So, first pick, 14th overall. Maybe a bit of a surprise. We weren't necessarily thinking defensive line. Maybe,
pretty much anywhere else on defense.
There were needs on offensive line, but it wasn't a deep class for that. Most of the other parts of the defense, secondary and linebacker, you were thinking, all right, we could be in the running there. There were talk about running back, but of course McCaffrey went in the top 10. So pick 14 comes up, and who do they pick? Derek Barnett, the defensive end from Tennessee.
Yeah, I had seen something this is a couple weeks ago. They're like, book it. They're going to take Derek Barnett. And I was like, yeah, right. There's no way. And it wasn't a big thing.
It was one of the sports talk hosts, wasn't it?
Yeah. And then it turns out to be the case. Now, I kind of said this last year when they traded up, when they had the second overall pick and they took Carson Wentz. People were like, oh my gosh. And I'm like, last time we took a quarterback number 2, it worked out pretty well. That was McNabb.
Last time you took a defensive end from Tennessee?
Last time we took a record-breaking defensive lineman from Tennessee.
Worked out pretty well. So I know that's a bit of a stretch. There's really nothing there. But,
you know what? I think this is summed up in this pick. They talked about the front office with this draft that has come out and actually said, we're not looking. Not that you don't want a guy that can be a splash and make a huge impact, but they said we're drafting for guys where we're projecting careers, not immediate impact.
And that's what good teams do.
Right, and they said, they've heard a lot of this. This shows that there's more stability in Philly than there has been for the last few years in terms of Peterson and the front office are not concerned about their jobs. Not to say they couldn't do any, if they go 2-14, they're in trouble. But that's not the expectation. The expectation is this team is going to start building young. And honestly, as a fan, look, this team's not in a position where they are going to add 1 or 2 pieces and make the Super Bowl next year. So this is what they need to do. You need to build young, get a good core. I think they have a lot of pieces here that I really like. I like the Barnett pick. Sidney Jones could be, you're going to have to wait and see, but could be the best defensive back in the draft. A lot of people thought he was a top 15, top 10 pick before he tore his Achilles, but he's ahead of schedule, could come back in October. Don't rush it. Let him
Nothing
learn,
underscores the regime's look towards the future and not just the immediate splash than this pick of Sidney Jones in the second round. There were plenty of other players they could have taken that would have had more of an impact this year. Jones, like you said, supposed to be cleared probably end of August, early September. Then there'll be some time to get him back in football shape. He'll probably start the season at least on the PUP list. He has to be activated, I think, by week 10. The PUP list is the first 6 weeks. But why rush it? I guess unless you think he can make an immediate impact.
Well, and that's one of those things where,
he probably gets redshirted this year.
Is the team doing better than you thought they would? Are you competing for the division? Or, then you might look to play him because you don't know how many shots you'll get. I don't think that's going to be the case. So I think, you get him to a point where maybe he can practice, or start, working out, but not, I guess, technically practicing. But you start getting those routines in where he's learning, he's around the team, but don't rush it. Don't rush it. They went cornerback again in round 3.
Yep.
Got Rasul Douglas from West Virginia. I think here, I might have this mixed up with Sidney Jones, but I think here it's a big guy. I think he's 6'3". I could be wrong.
I don't know.
I could be
know
wrong. I think he's long, which is something you like, can be a big benefit. You kind of have to wait and see, but a lot of people think, some of this based on what they have at positions. They already have some defensive linemen, so Derek Barnett, what impact is he going to have? Kind of have to wait and see. A lot of people think Russell Douglas could be starter fairly early for the Eagles.
At least in sub packages.
And not necessarily a statement all about Russell Douglas, but more about the Eagles secondary in general. And you hope he grows.
Two of their next 3 picks were wide receivers: Mac Hollins from North Carolina and Shelton Gibson from West Virginia. 2 completely different wide receivers.
Right. So Mac Hollins, this was kind of cool, and I liked seeing this. I actually watched this pick be made, and they put the film on, and they talked about how there's some things he needs to work on and stuff. Big wide receiver, but he is a special teams they showed
fiend.
Clip after clip of him gunning down the field and making the tackle on kickoffs and punts and stuff. They said he didn't have a big offer from out of high school, so he was a walk-on at North Carolina, and they said and has grown and gotten better and still plays with that fire though of he's trying to earn a spot, earn a scholarship, all that stuff. And they talked about this pick again. Just show this was not only does he have the possibility to be a really good wide receiver for the Eagles, but just the attitude and the work ethic and everything that he brings. They said he's a guy that comes every day and just works hard.
So what you're saying is after his rookie contract expires and there wasn't a ton of production on offense, he's going to go to the Patriots and be the next All-Star.
Yes. So
that's how this works, right?
Right. So I'm hopeful that they can do that with the Eagles, get some out of him before he leaves.
So what about Shelton Gibson? He's more of the speedster. He's the guy that's going to take the top off the defense and open things up.
You know what? You need some of that too, though. So I'm okay with that.
It's a good pair.
Right, exactly. You need those guys. And here's what it comes down to. Can these guys help the guys that are already there? All right, so Jordan Matthews.
You mean the 11 other wide receivers on the Eagles roster?
So Jordan Matthews, I think, is still a guy that he may not turn out to be as good as everyone had hoped originally, but can still be a contributor.
This is his swan song. This is his contract a year.
I think Nelson Aguilar can be better than he has been. He's not going to be the guy I was hoping. I was really excited when they got him. He's not going to be the guy.
We talked about him a lot 2 years ago.
He's not going to be the guy that I thought he was going to be. You know what I mean? But that doesn't mean he can't be productive in the right offense. I think a guy like Shelton Gibson helps that because they don't have that guy right now who can just blow the top off the defense and get down the field. So you need some of that. It's one of the areas where, you had some inconsistency, but with Carson Wentz, they were able to throw it down the field some last year. It's tough to gauge that, though, when you don't have a wide receiver who can't get behind anyone. You know, like
the Eagles,
when every deep ball is going to be a jump ball, you can be like, oh, it's a bad throw. Yeah, but if you have all wide receivers that are running 4.6s, it's hard to get behind a guy and throw it to him wide open. So,
in between Hollins and Gibson was Donnell Pumphrey from San Diego State. All
I
he
love
did
this
was
pick
set the FBS record for rushing yards.
And people were like, oh, he's only 5'8", all this stuff. Yeah, well, look no further than the Eagles to see what a small guy can do. I think it's a great fit for the West Coast offense that they run. The Andy Reid offense is basically all we're doing here. So I think he's a great running back, that especially when you get him in the 4th round. I love this pick in the 4th round. I like what they were able to do here. I was having this conversation with someone on Saturday. Okay, this might be a stretch, but in our lifetime, who's the best Eagles running back? I think it's pretty clear. With the Eagles, anyway.
Okay, that's what I'm trying to think. I was like, well, overall, or
right. Because there's
I'm probably forgetting someone because I'm not an Eagles fan, but the first one that pops to my head is Deuce Staley.
Okay, to me, I'm going Brian Westbrook.
Oh yeah, you're probably right.
So Brian Westbrook, kid from Villanova, was an unknown. Andy Reid knew him because he took his son to the games, and it was his son's favorite player. Right, gets him in the draft after they realized they could get him later than they thought because no one else was really on him. Was Brian Westbrook the best running back in the NFL? You could make an argument that there were a year or two where he was, but it was some of the system and they had a lot of weapons. I get that. But he was really good. I think Donnell Pumphrey could be a similar situation. I'm not saying he's going to be the best running back over the next 30 years for the Eagles, but he could be a guy that a lot of people are like, he played at San Diego State. No, I think if they can develop the other offensive guys the way they need to, Donnell Pumphrey could play a huge role in this offense. I'm not saying he's going to be the best running back in the league. I'm not saying you're going to hand it to him 30 times a game because that's not his style in the NFL. I don't think that's going to translate to him. But you're telling me, 7 to 13 touches a game, for him isn't somewhere where he could be. I think it's a great, great guy that you could mix up, you could combine with a guy like Corey Clements, who we'll see what he gets to do.
That was my takeaway. I was like, well, you got the bruiser, and now you got the probably someone that'll take over for Sproles.
Right.
That's
so I like that pick, and like I said, the key is in the 4th round. You weren't taking him in the 2nd or 3rd round. You got him in the 4th round.
With the second 4th round pick.
Yeah.
So the final 2 Eagles picked were Nate Jerry, safety from Nebraska, and Elijah Qualls, defensive tackle from Washington, teammate of Sidney Jones. They needed defensive help. Are these guys just going to be filler, or are they going to make an impact? Tough to say. It's hard to do so in the later rounds, but it's happened in the past. For the Eagles, like any other team, will find diamonds in the rough. Obviously, you hope that's true.
Right.
So Nate Jerry and Elijah Qualls round out the Eagles draft class.
And I'm okay with the Eagles drafting, not looking for the immediate splash. You'd love to have one of these guys step up and have a huge, breakthrough quicker than you would have expected. But I'm okay with them drafting for the future. That's okay because we're not a Super Bowl team right now. We need to get back to contending. That's what needs to happen, and that happens by building a team, not by trying to hit a home run every time.
All right. So a couple texts have come in from my dad. He says, "Wake me up when you're done with the Eagles." Blah 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 blah. Let's talk about a real team. He says that he thinks the Eagles should be a little bit better, but they'll still end up 4th place in their division. Let's see. We got one from my uncle. I'm not quite sure what to make of the one from my uncle. Something about super rings. I'm guessing there's a word missing in there. But maybe he's talking about more of what I mentioned about Mac Hollins.
Oh, okay.
How he'll be an average player for the Eagles. the team and the fans will be like, yeah, what is the big loss?
Right.
And he'll go to New England.
This will
and
be
win
what'll
another Super
happen.
Bowl.
He'll be a restricted free agent.
Right.
They'll make an offer sheet that they know the Eagles aren't going to pay to match. They'll get him for a good deal, and then he'll make the Pro Bowl and win a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And probably make the amazing catches that make it happen. But
All right, we'll wake up my dad from his slumber to pay attention.
I'll live
now.
that nightmare in the future. I don't have
Right,
to live that right
That's
now.
future Justin's problem.
Yeah.
All right, so Dallas picking 28th in the first round, 28th overall. Another Michigan player, and it's their first of two just for the Cowboys. Taco Charlton, defensive end, one of the best names in college football, already translating to endorsements around the Dallas-Fort Worth area in Texas. A little bit of a surprise pick, especially with other players that were on the board and based on their needs. I wouldn't say defensive line was at the top. We thought it was secondary because they lost 4 contributors, majority of them starters, because they were let him go in free agency or they cut him loose. So you thought maybe they'd be looking that direction. They go for the defensive line, Taco Charlton. Second and third picks, now they start to address the secondary. They get Chidobe Awuzie from Colorado. I have no idea if I said that right.
I'm going to go with
I was going to just push
two
through.
awesome names to start.
I was going to just push through and be like, just act like that's right.
Right,
Because who's
yeah.
going to question you?
Yeah.
But I honestly have no idea if I
No
I might
one
have
listening to
butchered
this show
that.
is going to question.
Probably not. Probably
Because
not.
no
Our
one
first
listening-
YouTube comment will be like tearing me apart
Right.
for pronouncing it
So
wrong.
here's the thing. I guarantee the people who just texted you would not do nearly as good of a job pronouncing the name.
No, you're
And
probably
because
right
they're going to
about
the
that.
Cowboys, we're going to have a chance to hear this for a long time.
So that's the first cornerback picked by the Cowboys, second round, 60th overall pick. Then in the third round, 92
Was he the
overall,
guy with some issues in
Jordan
Colorado?
Lewis, someone thought probably better than closing in on the top 100, maybe more of a top 50 type player. But he had some off-the-field stuff recently
So,
that's still hanging over his head.
To me, Jordan Lewis was the better player than just didn't get the hype that
Jabril
Peppers got. If you were talking to me who was the best defensive player on that team last year, I'm going with Jordan Lewis, not Jabril Peppers. That's me personally. I didn't see every Michigan game. I saw a bunch of them, but I didn't see every Michigan game.
The only one I saw, I'm not glad I saw it. So
And they all looked awesome that game.
So Jordan Lewis, late third round pick, 92nd overall, cornerback from Michigan. Yeah, he's got a chance because of their depleted depth chart to start right away if he's not in trouble with the law and the league.
Yeah, but I mean, it's the Cowboys, so they're perfectly fine with that kind of thing all the time.
Shots fired. All right, so we talked about his teammate with the Eagles just a few minutes ago. Ryan Switzer, a wide receiver from North Carolina, going to Dallas to play ball there. He's very similar to Cole Beasley, so a lot are wondering whether that means Beasley's on his way out.
I think Beasley is on his way out, mostly because he's done so well. He's going to need a bigger paycheck, and I don't think the Cowboys are going to give it to him.
Right, now, we mentioned.
Because they're going to have a number of big contracts coming up in the next few years.
Yeah, yep.
They're going to have to start to prioritize, and giving it to a productive but third best wide receiver, not the way to go.
Not the best
Right.
way to go. So we said they needed secondary help. So they already took 2 cornerbacks. Now they come back in the 6th round, 2 picks, both DBs. Xavier Woods from Louisiana Tech, safety, and Marquez White, a cornerback from Florida State. So now 4 of their 6 picks, defensive backs. And they had to do it. They lost 4 contributors, are gone. And this is a team that was, what were they, 14-2? 13-3.
Yeah.
They gave it gimme to the Eagles at the end of the year.
Hey, all I know is the Eagles sent them on a downward spiral, and they didn't recover.
So 4 players right here. Obviously, the earlier ones are going to be likely to make contributions as rookies, especially Lewis. If he gets cleared and doesn't face any disciplinary action, he's a guy that could be starting on the outside immediately. 3 picks in the 7th round for the Cowboys. Joey Ivey from Florida. Noah Brown from Ohio State, another wide receiver. And then a second defensive tackle, Jordan Carroll from Colorado. 2 Colorado players for the Cowboys as well. Also, now we get a couple of Michigan, Ohio State players in there. A Florida and Florida State. So it's interesting to see where these guys play college ball. Now they got to play with former teammates or arch rivals.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how that kind of how that translates. But I think they did get some good players there. Like you said, those defensive backs. It'll be interesting because they kind of need some of them to step in right away.
At least two of them are going to play significant time this year.
So,
Probably you would think it would be Woozy and Lewis.
Yeah.
But who knows? If Woods or White step up with the lack of depth down there.
Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe all of them will see some time in 2017. All right, so the third stop on the NFL Draft Recap Tour is Pittsburgh. And they made a splash taking another linebacker to shore up their defense, but one with a familiar name and pedigree, T.J. Watt from Wisconsin. Now, if he becomes anything like his older brother, you're not going to be happy about that.
No, it'll be awful. It'll be absolutely awful. And I don't wish that against him. Like I like J.J. Watt. I really wanted the Eagles to get him. I knew they wouldn't when that happened. But I really liked J.J. Watt. T.J. Watt almost killed Trace McSorley in the first half of that game in the Big Ten Championship this year. Like, he was just destroying him over and over. Penn State had their revenge on that.
Yeah, they got it in the end.
I don't know.
As we heard in the opener.
Did you see the Twitter exchanges? So when they drafted him,
JJ told Le'Veon Bell to was it Le'Veon?
No, what I'm saying is, so somebody sent a Wisconsin fan sent a thing and mentioned Trace McSorley on Twitter.
Yeah.
Like, are you awake yet? And at like 2:30 in the morning, he said, "Yep, wide awake," and then did like a smiley face and a ring because they won. And then Evil James Franklin, satire account, sent out a picture that said, "Neat, 2 first-rounders in the same frame," and it's Saquon beating T.J. Watt on the wheel route that gave him the lead. But anyway, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, a lot of fun back and forth.
That aside, I really like what T.J. Watt did at Wisconsin. For what it's worth, which is not much, J.J. Watt has said that T.J. is much better at this point than
career,
he was.
Yep.
And I would honestly, I might agree with that. J.J. Watt showed flashes at Wisconsin, but was also
he was a walk-on, wasn't he?
Well, he transferred. I think he was a JUCO transfer.
Oh, okay.
I think he went to like Wisconsin Whitewater, one of those schools that like wins a lot at one of the lower divisions. So maybe not a true JUCO, but T.J. Watt was more known, I believe, and
well, he's also more raw because he was a fullback until this year. This is his first year playing linebacker.
Right. So, yeah, and he played really well. I think that's a great pick for the Steelers. I really do.
I agree. I like their second pick, another wide receiver,
Yep.
Juju Smith-Schuster from Southern Cal. We saw him in person in the Rose Bowl, and he's got some talent to bring to that offense. I loved seeing Martavis Bryant and who was the other one? Who did he say that he's coming to replace? I wanted to say Wheaton, but it wasn't Wheaton. It was Sammy Coates.
Yeah.
Sammy Coates. He said Smith-Schuster's coming to replace Sammy Coates. The Pittsburgh receivers already arguing just after the pick.
Well, and did you see, like, Tomlin got on there and was like, play nice.
Yeah.
Like,
so, but I mean, I do like the pick for the Steelers.
Yes.
And another guy, a mid-round wide receiver pick that'll end up being the next big thing.
Yep.
I could see that happening with Smith-Schuster. Cameron Sutton, we talk about the Steelers always have issues in their secondary. They refuse to take him early, but they get Sutton from Tennessee.
Yeah, so we'll kind of wait and see because it's like a revolving door in that secondary, and I don't know.
Probably the feel-good story of the draft.
This is an awesome
of college
story.
football this year.
Again, another one that tears me because I'm like, how can I actually?
Right, because he played
between
at
the
Pitt.
NFL team and the college team,
It's just all down the toilet.
Right.
So one of the best stories of college football this year was James Conner's return to action following battle with cancer. Running back from Pitt is taken by the Steelers in the third round, pick 105, and very, very emotional thing for him. Very good story.
ESPN's done a couple of like the 10-minute like special segments. The ones where Tom Rinaldi comes on and you're going to start crying.
Right.
They've done a couple of those with James Conner. I suggest searching for those and watching those. They're incredible. Again, one of those. James Conner goes to Pitt. I can't root for him. goes to the Steelers, can't root for him. Yet
You still
the
want him to do
story
well.
of James Conner,
Right.
it's like, how can I not root for him? So, like, I do hope that he is successful there. I'm really happy for him, for all those obvious reasons.
Pick 135 in the 4th round. Steelers, maybe, kind of, sort of, considering life without Roethlisberger, maybe take a flyer on a quarterback. They do so with Cameron Sutton's teammate, Joshua Dobbs. Who does he compare to? Dak Prescott. Where was Dak Prescott picked?
135.
Obviously, those connections, as we mentioned with the Eagles, irrelevant, but
Right.
fun. We'll always talk about pick 199 for quarterbacks. Pick 135, now maybe a new one. Joshua Dobbs from Tennessee. An interesting one. We know Roethlisberger's back this year. Could Dobbs supplant?
Right. You start wondering, because they did talk about, talk about this with Ben, not necessarily this specific pick, but the draft strategy in general. If we may be looking, because I think the consensus is Landry Jones is not the guy,
Right.
That's going to be the long-term
Not long-term.
replacement, right? Is the guy for a game or two that Ben will be hurt this year because he's hurt every year because he
takes a beating.
He does take a beating, but he also likes to tell you how much of a beating he takes. Not that he does, but he likes taking credit for the beating that he takes. I'm just taking my shots while I can.
Yeah,
cause,
hey,
'cause
let
he's
it
good,
let it go,
right?
let it go.
But they did address this with Ben, and to be fair, Ben kind of put the ball in their court
Right.
to do this when
I
he's
don't
like,
know if
I
I'll
may
be back
retire.
next year.
Oh, okay, well, so we're kind of leaving us in that spot. So like that's one of those where I'm glad that's how that worked out, because if Ben would have been like, mad about this pick, like we need help other places, like no, you can't tell the team or the public that you might retire and then also be mad that they're trying to find replacements
Right.
in case you retire. Like, so that's not how it played out, but again, Ben being in the middle of drama, shocker.
The final 3 picks for the Steelers were Brian Allen, another cornerback pick from Utah. Colin Holba, a long snapper from Louisville. Interesting to see a specialist like that picked.
Good for him.
Not till the 6th round. Yeah, good for him. Congratulations. Then 7th, defensive end from Western Michigan, Keon Adams. So real quickly here, we got a couple teams left to do. We're going to run through the Ravens next. And as usual, a pretty strong draft from Baltimore. First up, Alabama. First Bama player taken was Marlon Humphrey, the cornerback,
Yeah,
at 16.
I like that pick for them. A lot of people think of their defense as being solid, and they can be at times, but they need to shore up that secondary, especially with the injury bug that they've had that seemingly has been for a couple years.
Up next, another solid pick, one that thought to maybe go earlier. Tyus Bowser, the linebacker from Houston.
Yeah. In round 3, they were able to get some more defensive help. So you see kind of a theme here in Baltimore, which is interesting because their offense isn't exactly letting it up, but they went defense. So they went with Chris Wormley, who again was a good player at Michigan. Kind of played his role really well. I believe it was Chris Wormley that they talked about was a walk-on.
I don't know.
I thought they talked about him being a walk-on. I think his brother plays at Michigan now. He was a walk-on, and maybe there might have been an older brother who's now in the NFL who was also a walk-on at Michigan.
Interesting.
I think. I might have that mixed up. But there was a Michigan player where that story fits. I think it was Chris Wormley.
4th defender in 4 picks. Their 2nd, 3rd round pick, 78th overall. Another Alabama product, Tim Williams, another solid pick for the Ravens. And then to round it out, they went with 2 guards and another defensive back, Nico Siragusa from San Diego State in the 4th round, Jermaine Ilyamanor, guard from Texas A&M in the 5th round, and then the 6th round, Chuck Clark, a defensive back from Virginia Tech. So overall, they went with 5 defenders and 2 offensive linemen.
Perfect example. You look at this draft, and I guarantee there are a bunch of fans who are like, what? We didn't get like anybody. No, this is the kind of draft where you look back like, and I'm saying that, kind of independent of the exact players, but just positions and, drafting solid guys, This is the kind of draft where you look and you're like, 5 years from now, they're like the great class of 2017 for the Ravens,
It could be a foundation.
Right, it'll be like their 2 starting guards and 3 Pro Bowlers on defense.
Right.
Just that's the way this tends to work out sometimes.
So Another great draft from the Ravens. Not flashy, but a lot of substance. Should they have taken a developmental quarterback? Looking some years down the road.
So
Get out
are
of
you
that
asking
Flacco
if Joe
contract?
Flacco is elite? Or, I'm kidding.
I can ask it, but it's a pretty easy answer.
He is. He's a Super Bowl champion.
Certainly.
Right.
All
Rings
right.
are all that matter.
So
Right,
because
Dan Marino?
he was listening, maybe he's not anymore. I'm just going to blow past that. Let's do the New England Patriots because it's quick. They didn't have very many picks. Unfortunately, it's because they traded their first rounder for Brandon Cooks.
Yeah. They also lost one of those picks somehow. I don't know.
I know, yeah. Who knows what happened there? So 2 third-rounders, a 4th rounder, and a 6th rounder. The first of the 2 third-rounders was Derek Rivers, a defensive end from Youngstown State. I don't have much to add about that.
Yeah, me either. Except Tressel's the university president there. I know that. But,
Started there.
Yeah.
Or at least that's where he gained notoriety before he went
Yeah.
to Ohio State. Then 2 picks later, 85th overall, Antonio Garcia, offensive lineman from Troy. 4th round, 131, Dietrich Wise, defensive end from Arkansas. And they rounded out 6th round, pick 211, Connor McDermott, offensive line from UCLA. So they went defensive end, they went pass rusher, someone to protect from the pass rusher, someone to protect from the pass rusher.
They're just like, at the introductory press conference, they're just going to line them up and be like, all right, you guys, you 2 over here, you 2 over there, so you
Ready,
can get to the quarterback.
go.
Yeah. And if you touch our quarterback, we'll kill you.
Yeah.
But, just because it's the Patriots, I think it's safe to say, 3 of these guys will be Hall of Famers?
Yeah,
right?
3 out of 4 will be
So,
Hall of Famers.
probably, a good 8, 9 Super Bowl rings between the 4 of them. So that's how that'll work out. Forget being able to draft early or in more quantity. These are probably the 4 guys you wanted from the draft. We'll look back on that in 6 years or so and be able to realize that.
Right, so they lost the pick, they traded the pick, but, you got to include Brandon Cooks in here, which is already an established wide receiver.
Right, yeah.
Another threat. Based on what else they did in free agency, the Patriots are destined to win the AFC East and be probably 14-2 and are easily the favorites to at least represent the AFC in the Super Bowl, if not win the Super Bowl outright.
Oh, yeah, Tom Brady doesn't have to sit out the first 4 games this year, so chalk that up. Now, they went 3-1 last year, so
right.
They will find a way to improve on that, though, and they'll be 4-0 after the first month of the season. So.
Lastly, my team, I was not thrilled with the pick of Charles Harris, the defensive end from Missouri. I know this means very little, but we kind of said it earlier. Defensive ends from Missouri haven't had a great history, at least recently. And I know it should be independently thought of, but people talk all the time about positions from school don't succeed in the NFL. I'm just not high on Missouri pass rushers. Harris apparently was high on Miami front office list, and they got him. So he gets to learn from former Penn Stater Cameron Wake. Hopefully he has an opportunity to fit in the rotation this year and will eventually take over for Wake in the next 2 or 3 years. I was happy about their pick of Raekwon McMillan.
I like that pick.
I don't like Ohio State, but he is a thumper. He is a prototypical middle linebacker. He may get asked to play strong linebacker this year, although I think he'll sit behind Kouamisi, learn both strong and middle.
Good.
He'll be probably taking over for Lawrence Timmons in a few years at middle. Timmons came over from the Steelers, the new Dolphins middle linebacker. So I think McMillan will get special teams time. He'll be the primary backup at a few positions, but I like the pick.
I think that may be their strongest pick.
I know some people
personally
were surprised that they took him over, I think it's Zach Cunningham. I personally preferred McMillan, but I had seen more of McMillan than Cunningham.
Yep. So I don't know. My take, linebacker from a Big Ten program like Ohio State, that we talk about positions. Like, I know there's been some misses there for them in the pros, but like there's been some quality linebackers out of Ohio State too. So like I like that pick, Raekwon McMillan, not only for that reason, but I think he's a good
Speaking
value
of Ohio State
2.
linebackers, I think both A.J. Hawk and James Laurinaitis retired this offseason.
They did, yeah.
All right, so Dolphins' third pick, 3rd round, 97th overall, Cordray Tankersley, a cornerback from Clemson. A couple big-name cornerbacks from Clemson have come out over the last few years, so Tankersley was kind of in the shadow there. He stepped up in a big way this year, won the national championship. He'll have an opportunity to at least play in sub-packages, probably push the starters, though I don't see him taking over this year for either of the guys, including one of last year's picks, Xavier Howard. But he should easily fit in with the Michigan State converted wide receiver to cornerback Tony Lippett. And, Dolphins needed help in the secondary. I know they were down a bunch of starters when they lost to the Steelers in the playoffs, but they needed help in the secondary, and hopefully Tankersley is that. I saw both sides of the coin in terms of picking Isaac Ariada. I think it's Agiata. I think this is spelled wrong. I didn't write it. I just copied it. So I believe it's Asiata, like Matt Asiata from the Vikings. A guard from Utah was the Dolphins' 5th-round pick, 164, or their first in the 5th round. I saw both that it was a good pick and that it was a bad pick. I don't have a lot to say. The Dolphins needed help in the interior offensive line. The word from the Dolphins sites, the beat writers, is that he'll compete right away for an opportunity to start this year. Second 5th-round pick for the Dolphins, Devon Goodchow. Check out that spelling. That is a typical LSU spelling. That is perfectly fits in there so perfectly. Ends in AUX. Was absolutely amazing when I saw that he played at LSU with a last name like that.
It just fits.
It does. So the Dolphins actually went defensive tackle back-to-back with Devon and then Vincent Taylor from Oklahoma State. Dolphins looking to the future. They have Sue and Phillips there now, but you can never have too many linemen, especially interior guys. And with the amount that Sue gets suspended and Phillips' health in question, both these guys could see the field this year.
Sue, I honestly, and this isn't a statement on his production, but I think first chance they have to get out from underneath that contract, they're going to do so.
It won't be this year.
Let me rephrase that. When it won't just bear, they could get out from under it whenever they want. But
honestly, though, I think the significant money was in the first 2 years.
So yeah, and that's usually when the bonuses are and all that stuff that you've already spent that. So you
well,
kind
maybe
of
it was year 1 and 3. It
so,
was something weird like that.
Also, that's one of the things. Just going back a little bit, to people were surprised because the Bears just signed Mike Glennon to a 3-year contract, but everybody said
Trubisky.
It could be a 1-year contract for them.
A lot of them work out that way.
Which doesn't mean they're going to cut him after year 1, but it means they could cut him after year 2.
Right.
And not take the huge hit.
The last Dolphins pick was Isaiah Ford, a wide receiver from Virginia Tech. I don't have much to say about that. I haven't seen Ford play at Virginia Tech, and I don't know what Miami was thinking when picking him. Not to say that it wasn't a good pick.
I know.
It's a 7th-round pick, so it's tough for me to really know much about it. All right, so that's the main 6 teams we cover, and then a couple other notable picks. We talk about the Bengals and their running backfield got a little bit busier. They have Giovanni Bernard. They drafted a few years ago. Then they got guy from LSU.
Yeah.
Can't think of his name. I can't think of anyone's name tonight whatsoever.
But now they've added Joe Mixon.
Now they've added Joe Mixon, and obviously he has massive off-the-field issues. He says he's learned that things are different. I think it also happened in 2014. It's just it really blew up this year.
Yeah, because he sat out an entire year.
Right.
He was suspended. People are like, he didn't get punished. No, he did get punished.
It's just it happened so long ago, but it all blew up this year.
Right.
So very talented. He probably dropped because of that. Some think he could, because depending on if you liked Fournette's style or not, Mixon could be the best all-around back in this draft.
Right.
McCaffrey is the slash type of guy, but Mixon takes that and is a great runner, but between the tackler runner.
And I'll say this, he needs to get that stuff straightened out. Obviously that's not going to fly, and if it, if that continues to be an issue, he should and will end up in jail. That if he keeps having issues like he's had, that's going to not take very long to kind of work its way out. The flip side of that is if he can, if he has changed, if he is going to, get his life together, I guess, for lack of a better way of explaining it, then honestly, if you're Cincinnati right now and Marvin Lewis, go ahead and take him, because if it doesn't pan out, right, you're not going to be around to have to deal with all that stuff.
Right.
That's a terrible way to look at it, but that's honestly part of what I think they're looking at here in terms of. Now I know Marvin Lewis isn't the only one calling shots there, but
right.
Cincinnati is in a win now mode, and I think Joe Mixon gives them a chance to win now. And if there are problems, they will have to deal with that down the road. But if there are problems, the current staff isn't the one that's going to have to deal with those problems.
At 52, their cross-state rival Cleveland Browns found their quarterback of the future. Soon to be Rookie of the Year, according to Mr. Mark Rizzo. Deshaun Kaiser, quarterback from Notre Dame. We talked about the Browns getting a quarterback. They did so at the 52nd pick.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, he's got the body of Cam Newton, and he's got the preparation and mindset of Tom
Marcus
Brady.
Russell? Oh.
According to him. So.
Oh, was that Kaiser? I was thinking that was Watson.
That was Kaiser that said that.
Oh man.
Now, a lot of people said
Deshaun is.
A lot of people
off.
said it was taken out of context. Like he was asked,
come on, the media wouldn't do that.
Well, I know, but and he probably was asked, like, who do you compare yourself to?
Right.
Like, what's he supposed to say? Like,
Jamarcus Russell.
Yeah. Coy Detmer. Like, what if he would
Ryan
give an
Leaf.
answer like that? Oh my gosh.
All right, so
Rudy.
Another team maybe thinking quarterback of the future. New York Giants take Davis Webb, developmental quarterback from California. Eli Manning, a lot of talk about him in the media recently because of memorabilia, but his time in New York is coming to an end. He's been there. He's been there. This is his 13th year, 13th or 14th year with the Giants. So they got to start thinking about the future. They went with Davis Webb. A few other quick hitters here. Jacksonville Jaguars took D.D. Westbrook from Oklahoma. He, with Baker Mayfield, was a very dynamic duo for the Sooners this last year. Denver Broncos stopped the slide of tight end Jake Butt from Michigan. He slid because he tore his ACL in the bowl game. He's going to collect a few $100,000 in a medical payout because of it.
And he's also going to be a great pick for the Broncos.
Yes, he is.
Especially at 145. Maybe not this year, obviously, but he's going to be the next good
Whenever
tight end
the Broncos
at Denver.
figure out the quarterback situation.
Which, honestly, isn't the worst-case scenario because, let him sit out this year while they're still sorting that stuff out. When they start to turn the table or turn the corner, now you add in a first-round talent in Jake Butt. So that's good.
Another quarterback because quarterbacks move the needle. Buffalo Bills took Nathan Peterman, James Conner's teammate from Pittsburgh. The Cleveland Browns took Caleb Brantley, defensive lineman from Florida. May cut him before he even signs a contract because of off-the-field issues. Detroit Lions quarterback Brad Kaya from Miami. And finally, the last pick of the draft, pick 253, normally 254, but some team lost one. I don't know. I forget what happened there. But the Broncos, Mr. Irrelevant this year, interesting. Chad Kelly, quarterback from Ole Miss. Chad Kelly is a quasi-local player. Yeah. He went to school at... Where do you play high school ball at now? Oh, he was local, a school that we know. But now I can't for the life of me remember what it is. But he eventually ended up at Ole Miss.
He has had
major off-the-field issues, but he's the nephew of Hall of Fame quarterback Jim Kelly. Right. So John Elway throwing a bone there, picking him with the last pick. Mr. Irrelevant is Chad Kelly from Ole Miss. So, last section, local picks. We had a kid literally next door to the Wilson School District from Wyomissing, Alex Anzalone from Florida. Outside linebackers going to the New Orleans Saints with the 76th overall pick. Then a couple local colleges or semi-local colleges. 2 Villanova players going to the Chiefs and Titans. A defensive lineman that I'm not even going to attempt to try to say his name.
Some people said one of the reasons he dropped was because he spent too much time worrying about his academics. That was one. I shouldn't say that's one of the reasons he dropped.
Who are you talking about?
Tano Passagnon or whatever. One of the reported knocks on him was that people didn't know how much he values football because he worries about the classroom stuff too much.
Chad Kelly attended Red Lion.
Oh, I had no idea. Wow.
Yeah.
No idea.
So, yeah, wow. I knew it was like quasi-local. It's York.
I did not know that.
Yes.
That's all. I mean, that's cool. But, there's a lot going on there. You can look that up if you want. Because there are multiple things that I could be referring to.
Yes.
So
2 Temple players besides Reddick that went in the first round. The Bills took Deion Dawkins, a guard, and the Colts took Nate Harrison, a cornerback from Temple. Then the Bears took a lineman from Kutztown.
And that's a cool one. Jordan Morgan played half a year of high school football because his school didn't have football, but you have to do enrichment stuff. So he played like at the co-op at a different school because he had to do something, and he chose football. Goes to Kutztown, which is a local university, and starts 43 games for them with Division II, and like a legitimate Division II program at Kutztown.
And now he's
picked
in the NFL, going to maybe protect Trubisky in the long run. One of the other undrafted players of note going to the Colts, Chris Mueller, an offensive lineman from Rutgers. Why am I mentioning him? Well, he attended Boyertown.
Yeah, from Boyertown. Boyertown also had the fullback for the Patriots also went.
Correct. Yes, and he now has 2 Super Bowl rings.
Yes.
So, because they're the Patriots.
Good for him.
All right, so that is our 2017 NFL Draft recap. We went way long tonight, one of our longest shows in a while, although a lot of our shows recently have been running over an hour. Hopefully you appreciate the content, and we will be back next week, completely changing gears. We're going to actually talk some NBA playoffs next week. We're going to have a guest.
I'm ready.
From one of my Star Wars podcasts, a man by the name of Dallas Wood is going to join us. He is a Utah Jazz fan. He lives out.
Big win for them today.
Absolutely. So I'm sure he'll
Moving
be stoked. Hopefully by this time next week, he'll be still excited about the Jazz. And we'll have him on via Skype to talk a little NBA, which we don't do often, but we will cover next week.
Go Raptors.
Get more from us at jmnjrradio.com. Make sure you follow all of our accounts on Twitter at jmnjr_radio, at Joe Mays and J-Raff, at jmflyer1454, and at Mr_Raffoff. You have birthday shout-outs at all? I'm trying to think.
My mom has a birthday this week. Yeah.
I'll say happy anniversary to my in-laws, just, I believe, Friday, or is the end of the week. My parents is coming up next week, so I'll say happy early anniversary to them. And also a huge congratulations to my cousin Nick and his wife Kathy on the birth of their baby girl.
Yeah, congratulations.
So, I think that's it.
Yep.
Anything else? No, we're good. All right, thanks for joining us. This wraps up the 231st episode of the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show.
We hope you tune in every Sunday for our take on sports. Until next time, I'm J-Raff.
And I'm Joe Mays. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show. Tune in every Sunday for the latest sports discussions from Joe and Justin. Each episode is available live
on Facebook Live
and can be downloaded or streamed on iTunes and SoundCloud. You can interact with Joe and Justin on Facebook and Twitter, and stay up to date with the guys at joemaysandjraff.com. The Joe Mays and J-Raff Show is part of the JMNJR Radio Network. For more info, visit jmnjrradio.com.